what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. Hope everyone is doing well out there on this wonderful Tuesday and having a great start to your day and a great week out there so far. Here to give you some updated information on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Tuesday. Today is going to be just as quiet as it was yesterday for the majority of the country. We will speak a little bit longer on the West Coast, especially California, which really is the only area of the country that's going to be quite active today. There'll be an ongoing flooding risk, even a risk of thunderstorms. Won't be as high in of a risk compared to yesterday as far as those strong to severe storms, but we will have a risk of some thunderstorms and high winds and a flooding risk in California and the western U.S. today. So we'll speak on that. We'll talk about everybody else though too. We won't leave anybody hanging, but we will zip through a good portion of today's forecast pretty quickly just because there's not a whole lot to talk about, guys. A lot of areas of the country is going to be well above average temperature-wise. So if you're a big warm weather fan, you're certainly enjoying that. At the very end of the video, we will compare some model guidance with this storm system that we are watching for next week. There is a signal for the potential for a significant storm system next week. What is it going to bring? Is it going to bring severe weather? Is it going to bring a winter storm? Is it going to bring both? It has a good chance to bring both. Typically with these dynamic setups that we are seeing next week can bring both sides of the weather, talking about severe weather and winter weather and just a whole lot of rain in between. So we'll know more on this as we get closer, but between now and then, we will still just provide a little bit more detail with each video as we get closer until we really get into that forecast period where we have a really good idea of what's going to happen. But I really think next week needs to be watched. It really does. So with that being said, if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Had a person that was kind enough to correct me in my last video. I was talking about 500 millibars in yesterday evening's video, and I was saying that that was 30 to 40,000 feet up. I was totally wrong. That's around 18,000 feet up. I think in my head I was thinking about 200 millibars, which is equivalent to like 38 to 40,000 feet up when you convert millibars into feet. So please don't ever hesitate to correct me in my videos. Some people don't know how to correct somebody without being rude, but that person was very kind and polite about it. So I really appreciate that. It goes a long way when I'm trying to, all this information's coming to my head at one time and I tend to mix things up. You guys already know I butcher town names and cities. So thank you for the corrections that you guys let me know. It's a family type atmosphere and it's all love between me and y'all for sure. If you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. Let's get rocking and rolling. So the central and eastern U.S. is quiet. I mean, we do see areas of precipitation, but I think most of this is not even hitting the ground. Let me know if it is, because, if it is falling out here in like eastern North Carolina, it might be in the form of some sleet pellets, maybe some snowflakes, but I think for the most part, this is not hitting the ground. Out west, we do have moisture that's hitting the ground. We have a moist feed going into the Southern California coastline. We have rain showers, even maybe some rumbles of thunder out there in central California. I think the Sierra Nevada is going to pick up another several inches to feet of snow over the next 24 to 48 hours. And then we just got scattered and isolated rounds of moisture throughout the west. Higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain. You guys know how it is out here. But there's a ridge built up over the central areas of the country, and you got stable and quieter conditions, well above average temperatures. It's going to get well into the 80s today in Texas. Somebody might sneak and hit like 9 degrees. We'll see what happens. Storm Prediction Center. We had a little active weather in, central California yesterday. I don't think there was any reports of any tornadoes or anything like that, so that's good. But we will have a risk of thunderstorms again in the light green area. Just means there's a risk of general thunderstorms, even up here in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Could have a rumble of thunder, a flash of lightning or two out there, so be aware of that. But the rest of the country is pretty stable, pretty calm, and just not much to speak on. Excessive rainfall outlook around the LA area, points north, a little bit south. We will have a moderate risk of flooding, which means there's at least a 40% chance of flash flood guidance being met within 25 miles of any given location. The yellow is a 15% risk of that criteria. So we still have that ongoing flooding risk today into tonight for California. So please be aware of that. Watches, warnings, and advisories, once again, 80 to 90% of all the watches and warnings and watches are in California. Flood watches continue to litter the state of California. Winter storm warnings up in the pink. Those flood watches are in the green. Some high wind warnings still. Wind advisories still up. Winter weather advisories are up for the higher elevations of Utah, a few in Colorado, and also Wyoming. And then this area right here has some high wind watches and high wind warnings. It always seems to be very windy in this area of Wyoming. So some dense fog down here in Texas, and not much else going on across the central and eastern U.S. Very quiet. I'll use the word quiet a lot throughout most of today's forecast version of the video. And once again, it's going to be quiet in the southeast. Quiet start out there. It's cold. You know, it's gotten down to like 28 degrees here at my house in central South Carolina. So just a reminder that it is still winter, even though it seems like February over the last several years has been a non-existent winter month. It still gets quite cold. We start off this morning. We do have some moisture off the coast of the Carolinas. This will continue to just kind of drift away, and how more high pressure will take over and replace that low pressure that's been around across the southeast over the last few days. We get into this evening, I think temperatures will drop off pretty quick, especially the more tucked in you are into the Carolinas, up into Virginia, where you still got a feed of cooler air that's getting pushed down to the Carolinas. So another cold night, most likely. Well, temperatures will probably dip down pretty quickly this evening. By the time we wake up tomorrow morning, there's still nothing going on, but we still have this spin. And this spin off the coast of the Carolinas is actually helping to yank in a northeast flow down into the Carolinas and still pumping in some chilly air from the north. But as far as precipitation today, guys, the southeast is going to be pretty quiet. The northeast will be the same way, dominated by that high pressure, nothing going on. Won't even really get any snowflakes off the Great Lakes. No snow showers, no snow flurries, just nothing, just quiet weather continues. And there's your 10 to 15 seconds of fame for the Northeast. We probably won't spend much longer on the South Central U.S., as there's nothing going on out here either. We will have some flakes that will enter the picture in the Rockies of Colorado as we get into this evening. But you get into the overnight hours all the way into tomorrow morning. The only thing we see on the map is up here in northwest Colorado, where we do have some snow flying around in the higher elevations, maybe a little bit more so of rain in the lower elevations, as a low pressure begins to get outside the Rockies and will most likely generate a storm system across the Midwest and Ohio Valley in the form of rain. But today it's pretty quiet across the South Central U.S. North Central U.S., it's the same thing, guys. It's quiet weather this afternoon, getting into this evening, getting into the overnight hours, and then getting into tomorrow morning. There's nothing to speak on. I do think things are going to dramatically be different next week, and I'll speak on that here in a second. But, over the last couple of days, it's been rather quiet. Let's take a broad look out west. We still got that spinning cyclone off the coast of the western U.S., and this will continue just to bring a rich feed of moisture into the California coastline, the Oregon coastline, the Washington State coastline. And we have scattered and smothered moisture about across the Rockies too, in the form of higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain. But it's still above average out west. So, you got to get on up there before you see, snow. I think the snow levels are going to be pretty high in this case, and there's that low getting very close to the west coastline, and we will continue just to get this pool of moisture right into the Southern California coastline. There goes those rounds of thunderstorms that are possible. That will move and hit the coastline of California, move inland, could get some rumbles of thunder, and there's some rain pretty much affecting the entire west coast of the lower 48. And this continues into the overnight hours. And I think as we get into the overnight tonight, this is when the snow will start to pile up again in the Sierra Nevada. A little bit of snow in Nevada, stripe of snow into the higher elevations of northern Utah, Wyoming. We do have winter weather advisories where we'll get some banding of snow right out of Nevada, right through the heart and northern sections of Utah. And then we're waking up tomorrow morning and could get, a pretty gnarly band of higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain kind of making its way through Arizona and Utah sometime tomorrow morning. But a little bit closer look at California at this. There's the rounds of moisture that's moving in, and you see this kind of feed of moisture that gets going in the Southern California coastline from San Diego to LA, a little bit north of LA too. But this is really going to bullseye this area for several hours later this morning into this afternoon. We're getting into this evening. You continue to get rain, and then you just get this one band that's moving more so west to east that kind of slams the coastline, and then it moves on out. It delivers higher elevation snow. One day I will love to experience one of these. It's crazy to watch these heavier pushes of moisture that start off on the Pacific, hit the California coastline, move over the valleys, and then just stay intact and slam these higher elevations. I got a couple people I follow on social media that live out there in the Sierra Nevada, and they said it is not uncommon at all to get 3 to 4 inch per hour rates of snowfall. So I mean, I would love to experience something like that. It's probably pretty wild, but it's probably pretty standard up here in the wintertime. And then we're getting into tomorrow morning, and we're probably going to wake up to a little bit more so of a quieter period in California with just some scattered showers out there. Not a big deal. A broad look at the snow, though, and we'll talk about rainfall here in California here in a second. Broad look at the snow. It really depicts well that you got to be on up there for this to be falling as snow. I mean, you look at the Sierra Nevada, several inches of snow, higher elevation just outside of Salt Lake City, several inches to even over a foot of snow, higher elevations of Wyoming snow, and just scattered about across the northern Rockies too in the Cascades. And, you know, taking a look at the graphic out of Salt Lake City here, I don't show this area as much as I need to show it more is what I'm saying. But, you know, just a minor rest. This isn't a big deal at all. But it does indicate, you know, winter storm will bring accumulating snow to the central and southern mountains. Doesn't really talk about how high you got to be up, but it says total snow accumulations across the central and southern mountains will range from 6 to 12 inches of snow, and locally up to 18 inches of snow in the Brian Head. And I think that says Tushar Range. So if I pronounce that wrong, you guys let me know. But there's a cool graphic out of the Salt Lake City region. A little bit closer look at the Sierra Nevada. Let's take this all the way out to about Thursday morning. Several inches to maybe over a foot, maybe 2 feet of snow, depending on your location in the Sierra Nevada and obviously your elevation. But rainfall down here in the Southern California coastline, you know, San Diego between now and the next 24 hours. Half inch to an inch of rain, I think, is a good bet. You get up to LA, you know, most areas are going to get well over an inch, inch and a half. If you're in these higher elevations, just the push of moisture, the lift is probably going to squeeze out more moisture out the atmosphere. Therefore, you could get a few inches of rain. And if we look at snowfall from this, some of those higher peaks, I think one of these mountains is called like Mount San Antonio or something like that. You know, you can get over a foot of snow is what they're calling for. So be aware of that. Temperatures, you know, it's going to remain kind of chilly across the Northeast, nothing too crazy. And you just got that flow out the Northeast. It's going to keep the Carolinas, you know, protected from the very warm air today, the well above average temperatures. But the further you make your way west, the warmer it gets pretty dramatically, to the point where you get into Little Rock, it's probably going to try to get to 70 degrees a day. Shreveport, 75. Dallas-Fort Worth probably will hit 80 today. And once you get into the southern high plains of Texas, guys, the low to mid 80s. Somebody will probably try to get to 90 degrees a day. Folks, these are the same areas that are like 7 days ago, I think. 7 to 8, 9 days ago. Got over a foot of snow. So it just tells you, once you get into late February, things are a lot more dynamic. But it is well above average up here in the north central U.S. You know, you're gonna, you know, after getting that overachieving snow event in Minneapolis, you know, you're not getting thrown in the tundra, that's for sure. You're warming right back up into the mid to upper 40s a day. You might hit 50 degrees. The western U.S., it really tells you this is warm energy, meaning we got moisture surging into the western U.S., but for the most part, guys, it's above average out west. Arizona, you know, you're getting into the 70s and 80s. Depending on your location, especially southern Arizona. But, you know, temperature-wise, guys, it's well above average for the majority of the country. So let's talk about this storm signal system. I gotta stop saying signal. I keep saying that. I think I've said signal way too much over the last couple months with winter that I'm getting storm system and signal mixed up. But anyways, let's take a look at the European. We'll compare it with the GFS. So we're going to start both of these model runs Sunday morning, February the 25th, this weekend. Most of the country is pretty quiet. The lower 48 is rather quiet as we're waking up for a Sunday morning. But that changes pretty quickly. As we're getting into our Monday morning, Monday afternoon, we're starting to get a lot of snow out in the Rockies, trying to figure out who's going to get what. Still question marks. But I think this is going to start, you know, under the 1 week time frame out in front of us. So under the 7-day time frame. This is already beginning. All right. And then we start to get into Tuesday morning, which is a week from today, right? We got some moisture. We got some moisture in the east. Look at all the snow in the Rockies. And we got some sort of low kind of dropping down with this trough out west, with this lower pressure out west, which is going to create a lot of energy. And then we have a 990 millibar low. Looks like we have a drop of cold air coming down into the central U.S. I mean, not the south central, more so the north central. We're getting into Tuesday evening, 990 millibar low, heavy snow in the Rockies, especially the central Rockies. And then all of a sudden, this breaks loose as we're getting into Tuesday evening on the Euro. We got an ejecting surface low, 998 millibar low, stripe of snow across the middle of the country. That includes Denver through areas of just the central states. Let's just leave it at that. No point in starting to get very specific with states. But all of a sudden, we're having this, basically the jet is dipping down. Okay, we're probably going to have a gradient of temperatures, and these low pressures are probably going to ride this gradient. Okay, and here comes the first low. Look at this thing, 997 millibar low. Not super strong, but it has a chance to get stronger. Then we start to get to about 8 to 9 days out. We got snow on the backside of this. We got rain, and we're probably getting severe weather on the south side of this low, this surface low, with probably a pool of rich moisture getting pulled out ahead of this system, a moist sector, which typically spells trouble with severe weather depending on the other ingredients you have on the table. And this continues, and this has a chance to deepen. The low pressure does. We're getting into like next Wednesday night, Thursday, and then look at the winter weather side of this. It got very active around this time last year in the Great Lakes region also. In fact, around this time last year, we were dealing with a pretty significant winter storm, if you guys remember. But low pressure kind of cuts across the Ohio Valley and then moves into southern Ontario, and this turns into a significant winter weather event for the Great Lakes region. That's not a forecast, guys. We're just still trying to figure out the placement of these lows. I mean, confidence is pretty high. We're going to get a trough that drops out west. Is this thing going to eject? Are we going to have multiple surface lows that kind of ride the trough boundary? It's a big question here. But, you know, with the Euro, it's not quite as aggressive as it was in yesterday afternoon's European model run, meaning that it doesn't get as negatively tilted, but it's still a powerful storm system and would bring just a lot of rain for the eastern U.S., the potential for severe weather, and some gusty winds if something like this was to happen. So that's what, you know, the European shows. It goes 10 days out. What about the GFS? Well, it's kind of similar, guys. We start off Sunday morning, then we get into Monday morning, and look at all the snow breaking out across the Cascades. One thing with the GFS is it has a lot more cold air with this. It almost looks kind of funky in a way, to be honest with you. I don't know if I buy it, but it really drops the snow level significantly. We're getting into Monday afternoon, Monday evening of next week. Look at all the blue showing up out west, and we got a lot of Arctic air dropping down. Not only lower pressure in the western U.S., but a lot of cold air in the western U.S. also. And there it goes. That boundary setting up next about a week from today. You got a 985 millibar low breaking loose here. 983 right over Iowa. Snow on the cold side of this. Probably the potential for some sort of strong storms, severe weather on the south side of this low with moist air getting pulled in out the Gulf and just from the south. And then look at the snow. That's some heavy snow showing up for Denver. And then this thing moves on off. Okay, this starts to move into Canada with heavy snow into Minnesota. And then we have another low with precipitation that gets amplified off this surface low, 991 low. And this is basically a big frontal boundary, most likely, with a dip in the trough. Trough of low pressure with multiple surface lows trying to form. Now, are we going to get multiple surface lows, or are we going to get just one dominant one? Or are we going to get two or three? You know, it's a big question here. We don't know all those. We don't know all the answers yet. But we know that with each developing low, it brings in that warm, moist air. So on the cold side of this, you're probably going to get some sort of winter weather. That's a lot of cold air trying to surge south and east. 991 low right in here. And then that low ejects, moves into the Great Lakes region. Potential for winter weather. Now you notice we're 210 hours out. This is next Wednesday evening. But this, you know, could potentially bring a lot of winds, a lot of rain, and a severe weather threat somewhere. We just don't know where. We don't. And then, you know, we get on out to like 10 days out, and it looks like you got a lot of cold air spilling into the Ohio Valley, the south, and we'd be, if something like this would happen, we'd be greeting our March, first day of March, pretty chilly across the central and eastern U.S. So that's why I tell you, you know, there's a lot of people showing a lot of crazy things like, I wouldn't call it crazy. It seems like warm verifies more than cold these days, but a lot of people are showing that, you know, no doubt we're going to warm up significantly to start March. I would say no doubt we're going to be pretty warm between now and the start of March for most people, besides a quick cool down in the eastern U.S., but we don't know what's going to happen at the beginning of March. I mean, it's still February 20th. We still got another 9 to 10 days before March. But as far as that snow signal on the European ensemble, and this goes in 2-day periods, I think it shows it well. It shows a high-end snow signal out west, okay? I mean, I even think this could be a pattern where, like, Denver could get a significant winter storm, but I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, hey, watch out for that. And then there's that weak signal for snow somewhere, but it's everywhere, guys. It's everywhere. But there's that weak signal for snow across the high plains and northern plains up here in the north central U.S. as we are getting about 7 to 9 days out. And after that, there's no point in getting past 10 days. Now, speaking of the severe weather potential of this, I talked about this in last night's video. We talk on thermodynamics and kinematics. The first thing we'll look at is thermodynamics, and one of the best things you can look at when trying to nail down a long-range severe weather threat is dew points. You can't get severe weather with dew points in the 20s and 30s. Once you start to get in the 50s, you can get severe weather. But especially as you get into the 60s and 70s. But, in the 40s and lower, you're most likely not going to get any severe weather. You might get some crazy hail, but as far as tornadoes and things like that, you're not going to see it. So we start off Sunday morning. This coming Sunday morning, most of the country is very stable. You got dew points that are very dry in the teens, 20s, and 30s. But as we start to move into Sunday afternoon, look at these dew points climbing into the 50s, even some 60s along the Texas coastline. So you're starting to get that moisture return, and then we start to get into our Monday afternoon, Monday evening. All of a sudden, and this is just one run of the Euro, you get dew points into the 60s into Texas, all the way into Arkansas, Oklahoma, portions of Louisiana. And then we start to get into our Tuesday of next week, about a week out, and this moist, warm sector is still there. Very humid air for late February standards. I mean, we even got dew points in the 50s getting all the way up into Michigan. So a pretty massive, broad, moist sector, honestly, that's covering up the majority of the deep south, the mid-south, even though, dew points in the 50s aren't, you will feel a little bit of a kind of humidness in the air, if you will, if that's even a word, but, it's not substantially humid air or anything like that. But the deep south, you're starting to really pull in a lot of moist air with multiple surface lows kind of ejecting off the base of this trough. And then we get into Wednesday, and then this thing really starts to move, and then this is when we can get some dynamic weather, but it's kind of far out. But look at this, pool of moist air screeching across areas of the deep south, okay? We don't know exactly where the position of this is going to be. Now you combine your thermodynamics, which is not only including dew points, guys. There's more things. It's CAPE levels, your storm fuel, it's surface temperatures, it's lapse rates. But kinematics is pretty cut and dry. It's the wind energy in the atmosphere. And one thing with the ejecting trough with multiple surface lows is you're going to have, and this is what I'm kind of messed up in last night's video. This is the wind flow at 500 millibars, which is around 18,000 feet. So way up above our heads, winds are moving and pushing, over interstate speed, in Texas as we're getting into next Tuesday evening. We're getting winds pushing, 80 to 90 knots. So this tells us there's a lot of wind energy in the mid-levels of the atmosphere and probably in the low levels of the atmosphere too. But I typically don't show the low-level jet until we get a little bit closer because it can be displaced in different areas depending on where the surface low is. But in general, you look at this and you say, if this will get back in motion for me, pivotal weather is awesome for severe weather, but it's a very finicky site to use. But as we are getting, into the early to middle portion of next week, you got a pretty big wind field, right? That's pretty much all you can look at. Is you got a lot of winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. The kinematics are definitely there. And typically when you have winds like this, especially on the right front quadrant of these wind fields, you have a lot of lift in the atmosphere, and you have a lot of winds in all levels of the atmosphere that create the ingredients for damaging winds. And depending on how much turning with height you have, especially in the low levels, you could have a tornado threat. And that's kind of information that there's no point in diving super deep into until we really get a little bit closer. But you combine this kinematic field with the higher dew points, the higher thermodynamics. Where does the best overlapping of those two ingredients happen? That's where your highest severe weather threat will be. So we got a lot to figure out with this, but with the Euro, this thing really starts to get negatively tilted, and then it tries to take on, neutrally tilted, and then it tries to take on more of that negative tilt right here. We'll talk more on that when we get closer. Guys, I will not have a video this evening because I have soccer tonight. Tuesday nights are going to be impossible to get a video. I will do it if it's like an extreme scenario where we have significant weather on the way, and I think it's completely warranted to make a video, but I won't have a video this evening. We'll get back at it tomorrow. So no updates tonight. You guys have an awesome day, and God bless all y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in.